This module, the first focus is on diffusing capacity. A diffusion capacity test is a test of gas exchange properties of the lung. There are different terminologies which are used, so it can be sometimes confusing. In literature, you will also come across diffusion capacity, diffusing capacity. Then there is also a term called transfer factor, which I will define. Now, gas exchange of lungs takes place at alveolo-capillary level, and it is impossible to physically measure gas exchange in the millions of airway spaces that we have. So, this is a non-invasive test, a window into the pulmonary microcirculation, a window into the alveolo-capillary structure. So, it is a measurement which uses principles of physics to estimate an average of gas exchange properties of the lung. There are different methods, a steady state method, a rebreathing method, or a single breath method. The method which is most commonly used is called single breath method using carbon monoxide. So, it is written as DLCOSB. SB means single breath. Why we use carbon monoxide? What we breathe is oxygen, but when we do the test for gas exchange, we use carbon monoxide. The reason is that carbon monoxide and oxygen, they follow the same path through the lungs. Both compete for the same binding sites on hemoglobin. There is no carbon monoxide in the blood. So, we do not have to measure carbon monoxide in the blood, in the capillary blood, because we are interested in measuring the difference in carbon monoxide on the two sides of the alveolo-capillary membrane. On one side in the blood, it is assumed to be 0. So, all we have to do is to measure the capillary, take capillary blood CO as 0 and measure carbon monoxide in the alveolus. The rate of transfer of carbon monoxide is far faster than that of oxygen, and it binds to hemoglobin at a far greater affinity, 240 times fold higher than the binding capacity for oxygen. So, that is the reason why carbon monoxide is used. Now, there are several steps in uptake of carbon monoxide. We deliver carbon monoxide to the airways and the alveolar spaces. From there, in the last part of this path, the carbon monoxide diffuses mechanically in the alveolar ducts, air spaces and the alveoli. Then it transfers across the alveolo-capillary membrane from the gaseous phase of the alveoli to the liquid interface of the lining fluid. Then it diffuses through the lung parenchyma and alveolar capillary plasma, diffuses across the red cell membrane, then goes inside and binds to the hemoglobin. So, that is the path that carbon monoxide takes from the alveolus to hemoglobin. What determines how fast a gas will go across? One is the pressure difference. What is the pressure on one side of the alveolo-capillary membrane and the pressure on the other side of the alveolo-capillary membrane? It will be directly proportional. So, P1 minus P2 is the pressure difference. What is the area available for diffusion? That is the size of the alveolus. So, the volume transfer is proportional to the area available. Thickness is an impediment. So, it will be inversely proportional to the thickness, and of course, the physical properties or the diffusivity of the gas, which is a constant, like carbon dioxide diffuses faster than oxygen. So, the factors pathologically which can affect are the thickness and the area. So, this diagram shows the path of the gas transfer, and as we can see, there are different components which are measured in measurement of diffusion capacity. On one side is the alveolus, the other side is the red cell. So, oxygen on the alveolar side diffuses through the alveolar wall, going through the liquid interface, through the solids, enters the red cell and then combines with the hemoglobin to give HbO2. The physical path the length through which the oxygen is diffusing, that is measured at as what is known as dm, or the total diffusion of the physical structure through which the oxygen is transferred. So, that is the dm, or the diffusion capacity of the membrane. The final step in this transfer is the combination of oxygen with hemoglobin. So, that is Vc and theta. Theta is the rate of combination of oxygen with hemoglobin, and Vc is the volume of blood in the capillary. So, overall, the properties of the membrane, which are measured as a dm component, the rate at which oxygen combines with hemoglobin, and the actual volume of blood in the capillaries, all these will together determine the diffusion capacity. And this is applied in understanding when the diffusion capacity is abnormal, it is increased or decreased, what are the likely pathologies. And from this equation, we can make out that changes in the physical characteristics of the membrane, which means the size, thickness, or any disease therein, or changing in blood volumes, or changes in the rate of binding, all these will affect diffusion capacity. So, carbon monoxide uptake from the lung, which is written as KCO, this is the transfer of carbon monoxide in 1 unit of the lung, the one single alveolus which we are considering. So, this is the concentration fall in alveolar carbon monoxide per unit time per unit carbon monoxide driving pressure, written as PaCO. So, this gives us the property of 1 unit of the lung. Then we estimate the overall volume of the lung, which is written as VA. So, we have measured the transfer in 1 unit and then measure the total number of units in the lung. So, when the transfer in 1 unit is multiplied by the total volume VA, that gives us the average diffusing capacity for the whole lung. So, KCO is the transfer in single unit, VA is the total volume of the lung which is measured, the product is the diffusion capacity or diffusing capacity. In Europe, it is written as transfer factor. So, TL, DLCO, they mean the same thing. KCO is gas transfer occurring in a single unit, and VA is the alveolar volume of the all the units combined. So, in our diffusion capacity report, you will see these 3 terms being mentioned. So, it is important that we understand what KCO means, what VA means, and what DLCO means. Now, why transfer factor is used in European countries? There is a lack of consensus on which term is to be used, although they mean the same thing. The reason is that we are not estimating the maximum capacity of the lungs to transfer carbon monoxide. It is a measurement at rest. A capacity is usually one which is the maximum possible quantity. So, this is not the maximum possible quantity. That is why transfer factor is the more appropriate term, but in India we use diffusing capacity. There are 2 kinds of units which are used to express the results. Conventional units, which are used in most of the labs in India, are ml of carbon monoxide, that is the quantity of carbon monoxide per minute per millimeter pressure difference. So, DLCO is measured in mlCO per minute per millimeter pressure difference, and unlike spirometry, this is expressed at STPD condition, that is there is no BTPS correction the way we do in spirometry. So, this is expressed at 0 degrees centigrade and 760 millimeters mercury, that is at which it is standardized. In European countries, the SI units are used. So, you may come across reports which also give diffusing capacity as millimoles per minute per kilopascals. So, instead of ml, millimoles is used for carbon monoxide quantity, and for pressure instead of millimeters mercury, kilopascals is used. If we multiply SI units by 2.987 or roughly 3, we get diffusion capacity in the standard conventional units. So, in SI units, usually you will come across values like 4 or 5 or 6 for diffusion capacity, and in the standard conventional units, it is in 20s normally. The alveolar volume is measured in the same way as we do in helium dilution, except that this is single breath helium dilution. So, that is in BTPS conditions. So, we have got a measurement of diffusion capacity DLCO and VA, dividing the two gives us KCO. The gas exchange depends on several factors: the gas volume, the diffusion path which we have discussed earlier, the thickness and area of the alveolar capillary membrane, how good is the ventilation, and what is the volume of blood in the capillaries supplying the ventilated alveoli. Then the functional properties: how is the mismatch between the ventilation and the perfusion, and the uniformity of their distribution, what is the composition of the alveolar gas, the diffusion characteristics of the membrane, concentration and properties of the hemoglobin, and gas tension of the blood entering the alveolar capillaries in the ventilated units. These are important to understand the changes which occur in pathological conditions. There are physiological factors which affect diffusing capacity. One is the lung inflation, because diffusion requires full inflation. Why we give full inflation is because area is a determinant of diffusion capacity. So, patient has to take in a full inspiration. So, diffusion capacity is a measurement at breath holding at total lung capacity. So, lung is fully inflated to allow maximum area to be exposed to carbon monoxide. At this volume, what is the change in the alveolar capillary volume is variable, because lung volume changes differently from changes in capillary blood volume. Usually at full inflation, we get maximum diffusion capacity. So, therefore, diffusion capacity is always measured at full inflation, and this is ensured during quality control during the test. Capillary volume changes with physiological conditions. After exercise, it will increase because circulation becomes more dynamic, hyperdynamic. It increases in a supine position. It increases when a Muller maneuver or an inspiratory effort against a closed glottis is made, or in a patient who has undergone lung resection, because that recruits and dilates the alveolar capillaries in the remaining lung. So, these conditions will increase capillary blood volume, and as we have seen in the previous slides, capillary blood volume is a determinant of diffusion capacity. So, therefore, standardization of procedure is important. The patient is asked not to do any exercise. So, the test is done during rest. If we do the diffusion capacity in exercise, then breath holding becomes difficult. So, for that there are other methods like steady state, which are seldom used. So, what is usually done is that it is measured at rest, it is measured in sitting position. The patient has to relax after inhaling fully. So, there is no inspiratory or expiratory effort against a closed glottis to prevent technical factors from affecting diffusion capacity. Then other factors like the distribution of ventilation and perfusion, there are physiological mismatches also, because lung does not have a uniform VQ ratio from apex to bottom. So, that will contribute, and this is amplified in diseases. In fact, ventilation perfusion mismatch is a major cause of hypoxemia. So, what are the indications for diffusion capacity measurements? Evaluation and follow-up of parenchymal lung diseases. Most commonly it is done when we come across a patient who has got a diffuse parenchymal lung disease, like an interstitial lung disease. Quantitation of disability associated with interstitial lung diseases. Evaluation and follow-up of disease like emphysema and cystic fibrosis. Sometimes when you are faced with a differential diagnosis problem, whether this is asthma or the new entity called ACOS, what is the component of emphysema? diffusion capacity is reduced in emphysema. It is normal in asthma or maybe even increased. So, it is a very useful test to differentiate emphysema from asthma when there is a diagnostic problem. It helps to quantify impairment and disability in COPD, and this is used to prioritize patients for surgery in COPD, whether the patient is fit for lung transplantation or fit for lung volume reduction surgery. This is one of the criteria which is used in prioritizing patients for surgeries. Then there are other conditions where diffusion capacity is affected, because it is also related to the circulation. So, several of the diseases of the pulmonary vasculature, like primary pulmonary hypertension or the so-called group 1 pulmonary hypertension, then acute and recurrent thromboembolism, conditions leading to pulmonary edema, all these will affect diffusion capacity. Evaluation of pulmonary involvement in systemic diseases. There are diseases of connective tissue like rheumatoid arthritis or SLE, which may involve the lung, and patient may not be symptomatic. Very often this is the first change which occurs in the lungs, the change in gas exchange properties. So, if a patient has got a systemic connective tissue disorder, then a diffusion capacity measurement will give an early indication of pulmonary involvement in these conditions. There are drugs which can affect gas exchange like amiodarone or drugs used as chemotherapeutic agents. These can affect gas exchange before patient becomes symptomatic. So, during treatment with these drugs, a patient can be subjected to a test of diffusion capacity to detect early involvement of the lungs. Pulmonary hemorrhagic disorders. These are rare entities, but sometimes difficult to diagnose, and if the patient is stable enough to do a diffusion capacity test, because the quantity of blood in pulmonary hemorrhagic syndromes is increased, diffusion capacity is increased in these conditions. So, this test helps in differential diagnosis. In certain infections like pneumocystis pneumonia, gas exchange is severely impaired, and if patient is not too sick, as an early test, sometimes it can be used. Usually the patient is too sick to do a diffusion capacity test, but if it is possible, then this will give an early indication of the impairment of gas exchange. Desaturation during exercise is a very prominent feature of diffuse parenchymal lung disease or the interstitial lung diseases. So, who are the patients who are going to desaturate on exercise? This can be predicted by doing a diffusion capacity test. There are very few contraindications for diffusion capacity measurements. If the patient has carbon monoxide toxicity, usually this will be seen in patients who have been smoking too heavily, or if the patient desaturates, has poor oxygen saturation, requires supplemental oxygen, because in this test we use oxygen which is about 18% against the normal of 21%. So, if the patient is already hypoxemic, there is a risk of greater hypoxemia developing during the test. So, these are the patients who may not be fit for diffusion capacity test. If the patient is not able to do the maneuver properly, has a muscular incoordination, there is mental confusion, or there is a leak in the equipment, then the test will be invalid, because exercise affects diffusion capacity, it increases circulation, as we discussed earlier, the test will be invalid. Smoking increases the carbon monoxide concentration in the blood. So, if the patient has been smoking, then the test will give wrong values. If the patient does not take in the breath as directed by the technician, is not cooperating, then the test will not be done properly, or if the equipment is not calibrated properly or maintained. So, these are technical and patient related factors which give poor results. So, therefore, the results are erroneous. So, these are contraindications. There are few complications and hazards. For example, if the patient tries to breathe against the closed shutter, in this test we close the shutter. So, the patient is trying to do either expiration or inspire, then he can have a changes in intrathoracic pressure and have changes in the flow to the brain and can have syncope. These pressure changes can result in alteration in venous return to the heart and pulmonary capillary blood volume. So, therefore, it is very important that the patient maintains a relaxed state during which the breath holding is occurring. We correct for hemoglobin, so a correction formula is applied. This is done by the software. We assume carbon monoxide is 0, but if it is suspected to be increased, it can be easily measured and it can be entered into the formula to obtain a correct carbon monoxide diffusion capacity. It is affected by altitude, so that correction is put in. So, in a report you will see the uncorrected diffusion capacity and a corrected diffusion capacity. So, that correction is for these 3 factors, for which formulas are there, and these are done by the software. A test is not repeated until 4 minutes after the previous test. The reason is that there is a built up of the carbon monoxide, so it has to be washed out. We want the carbon monoxide in the blood to be 0. So, a few breaths will be required to eliminate carbon monoxide from the blood. So, if a test has been unsuccessful initially, we wait for 4 minutes for carbon monoxide to go out of the blood before repeating the test. The test is to be performed in a seated position, in the upright position, because patient position affects the diffusion capacity. There is a breath holding involved in the test, so patient should not breathe in or out during that breath holding. Other factors which can affect diffusion capacity, like recent alcohol consumption, vigorous exercise, smoking, diurnal variation, use of bronchodilators, this has to be standardized. So, normally we give bronchodilator during spirometry, and then at the end of the test of spirometry, this is followed by diffusion capacity. Other factors which may affect are recorded, because this is part of the standardization. Pregnancy, we do the test only in the first trimester, which increases because of the hyperdynamic circulation. There are different methods of breath holding, which is a technical factor. So, that is part of the selection in the software. And because of these standardization problems, there are large interlaboratory variations. Therefore, it is very important that the technician does it as per the standardization evolved uniformly. And there are guidelines available for standardization of diffusion capacity tests. The choice of equipment is also very important. So, therefore, diffusion capacity measurements are prone to technical errors far greater than a spirometry measurement. So, quality control is very important in diffusion capacity measurements. There are different kinds of equipments which are available, but in general there will be a source of test gas, there is a method of measuring inspired and expired volume, and a gas analysis is used for measurement of carbon monoxide and helium. The equipment has to be maintained and tested frequently, and there are different aspects of equipment performance which the technician has to pay attention to. So, this is volume accuracy, the accuracy of gas analyzers, their linearity, resistance of the circuit, the sensitivity of the demand valve, the timer, the volume dead space. So, all these are part of routine maintenance, which is a technician's job. So, a quality control schedule is required for all laboratories, which maintenance procedures are to be done every day and which are required weekly and which are required at 3 monthly intervals. So, these are standard maintenance procedures which a lab must standardize to obtain good quality diffusion capacity measurements. It is very important that the patient inhale properly. So, any discrepancy between the patient's volume which is inhaled and the total lung capacity, this will suggest that there is a volume calibration problem. So, equipment must be checked for leaks from time to time, and it is a very good lab practice to have a biological control, which means we do the test repeatedly, say at weekly intervals in a perfectly normal individual, the same individual every week. If the variation in measurements is up to 10% or less, it means your equipment is working fine. So, the technical quality control is a very important component of diffusion capacity measurements, as it is true for all other lung function measurements. The actual test takes very little time. The maneuver must be clearly explained to the subject. It is a very useful practice to let the patient watch another test being done. So, that is a live demonstration for the patient. The technician must give full instructions to the patient how he has to perform the maneuver, demonstrate how it has to be done, because it is a very quick maneuver taking only a few seconds. The test is done in sitting position. The room must be comfortable. Usually we maintain the room at around 24-25 degrees centigrade. a proper fitting mouthpiece and a nose clip must be used. The patient starts with a tidal breathing, that is normal breathing to get used to the equipment, to get acclimatized to the equipment. Deep inspirations are to be avoided. Then we ask the patient to breathe out slowly to residual volume, that is the patient has to exhale out completely and reach residual volume. From that point, the patient is connected into the test source gas, that is the gas which contains carbon monoxide. So, there is a valve, a switch available, or which may be manually controlled or may be software controlled. So, once the patient has reached residual volume, we connect the patient to the test source, and from that point ask the subject to breathe in fully, take maximum inspiration and reach total lung capacity, which means from residual volume to total lung capacity, that is a full inspiratory vital capacity breath of the gas mixture is taken, and this is followed by a breath holding. This breath holding is set in the equipment. So, there is a shutter which drops and patient is asked to relax. The shutter remains closed for about 9 seconds. After that, we ask the person to breathe out fully and collect the air which is coming out. So, it is a very simple procedure, a very quick procedure in a sequence: tidal breathing, breathing out to residual volume, take in a deep inspiration, hold breath and then breathe out. So, expiration, full inspiration, breath holding and expiration. So, these are the steps which are required in the maneuver. The gas that we use contains carbon monoxide, which is 0.3%, along with a tracer gas to measure alveolar volume. If you recall, we also measure VA, or the alveolar volume, which is nothing but a single breath helium dilution estimation of lung volume. So, that utilizes the same principle as is used for closed circuit helium dilution. 10% helium is included in the gas mixture for that purpose. Oxygen is 0.17 to 0.19%. So, it is slightly less than the normal oxygen that we breathe in the room air, and the balance is nitrogen. So, this gas is available in cylinders. So, either this will be filled in an inspiratory bag, or in some systems the patient breathes directly from the cylinder through a demand valve. So, this is the maneuver as it will be displayed on the computer screen. The patient breathes in. So, the first part of the trace which is going up is inspiration. So, patient inhales fully, reaches the breath holding. So, at that point there is no flow. So, the volume remains constant. After that there is exhalation. Now, in exhalation there are again two parts. The first part is the air which is in the large airways, the last portion of the inhaled breath. So, this is occupying the dead space. So, this first part of the exhaled air is thrown out. This is not used in estimation, because this is not taking part in the gas exchange. The latter part of the expiration, this is the gas which is coming from the alveolus. So, we have got the inspired gas volume with us, the inspired gas concentration, because the inspired gas composition is known and can be analyzed. We collect the alveolar gas sample from the second part of the exhaled air. So, that difference will tell us how much of carbon monoxide has been taken up. So, that is the principle of measurement of diffusion capacity. If the patient does not breathe in fully, this is very important, because the diffusion capacity test is performed at maximal inspiration, that is the patient must reach total lung capacity. So, full exhalation to residual volume and full inhalation total lung capacity, these are mandatory requirements for a correct performance of diffusion capacity, otherwise the test will be wrong. So, this inhaled volume is known as VI, the inspired volume, and this is also mentioned in the report. Normally, this will be close to vital capacity. So, if the inhaled volume is widely different from the vital capacity, it means the patient has taken a suboptimal inspiration, test is not valid. So, the cutoff is 85%, which means of the known vital capacity, and this is known because spirometry is done before diffusion capacity test. So, Vi or the inhaled volume must be at least 85% of the largest vital capacity. If this is not so, then the test is not valid. Then there are other technical aspects which are important. The inspiration must be rapid. If the patient breathes in too slowly, again we get wrong results. So, the correct standardization is that this volume, inhaled volume, which is 85% of the vital capacity, should be inspired in 4 seconds. Breath holding has to be totally relaxed. If the patient tries to breathe against it, tries to exhale out or inhale in, that is a Valsalva or a Muller maneuver, that will change the blood volume in the thorax. So, that can affect the diffusion capacity. So, the subject must be asked to relax at breath holding. So, breath holding time is set. Standardization is that it should be between 8 to 12 seconds, and this is software controlled. After that breath holding, the patient exhales out. This exhalation should be smooth, unforced, without any hesitation and without any interruption, and it should be fairly fast. So, similarly for expiration, the time allowed is not more than 4 seconds. So, expiration should be smooth, fairly fast and completed within 4 seconds. Sometimes patients stop while breathing in, or they breathe out while they are breathing in, or they try to make efforts against the closed shutter. So, all these can be monitored on the screen. So, if the smooth curve, normally it should just go up, stay horizontal and then come down. So, this is the typical loop that we get in a diffusion capacity test. If that is not observed on the screen, it means the patient has deviated from the correct maneuver, and usually the technician is able to tell from the shape of the curve that he is getting on the computer screen whether the patient is doing any erroneous breathing or not. So, if these are detected, then the test is discarded and it should be done again. The washout volume should be maximum. Usually a system will allow 750 to 1 liter of volume to be discarded from the initial volume, and then the next sample of about 500 to 1 liter is collected. So, which means that we leave out the first 500 750 ml of the exhaled volume, which is a dead space, and collect the subsequent 500 to 1000 ml of air, which means that the patient should exhale out about 1.5 liters, that is around 750 discarded and 750 for sample. So, usually if the patient's vital capacity is less than 1.5 liters, it may not be possible to do a correct diffusion capacity test. We analyze the gas in the inspired and the expired gas, and this is computed. It is a very complex computation. It involves natural log transformations. So, manually it is not possible, it is done by the softwares, but it will give us 3 computations as discussed earlier. It will give us the overall diffusion capacity, which is DLCO. It will give us VA, which is estimated by the tracer gas, and it will give us KCO, which is the DLCO divided by the VA. Then we apply the acceptability criteria, whether the patient has done the test properly or not. First thing to ensure is that the equipment is properly calibrated. Then the inspired volume must be 85% of the largest vital capacity, and it should be inhaled in 4 seconds. All these measurements are displayed on the screen, so the technician can easily check for acceptability criteria. The breath holding should be for 10 plus minus 2 seconds. There should not be any leak or a Valsalva or a Muller maneuver. So, the tracing must be inspected by the technician, and expiration should be smooth and completed in less than 4 seconds. So, once these criteria are fulfilled, it means that the patient has done the test properly, and then we can interpret the test. The test should be done twice because of so many technical factors and physiological factors which affect diffusion capacity. So, there can be variation from test to test. Normally, a 3% variation can be expected in normal subjects, and patients who have got obstructive AVDs can show up to 4% variation. And if the test is done on 2 separate days, up to 9 or 10% variation can be there. So, therefore, the repeatability requirements are less stringent than for spirometry. If the differences between two measurements and the patient's clinical condition is not changing are within 3 ml or 10%, it means the test is repeatable, and we take mean of 2 repeatable values. So, this is the degree of repeatability which must be ensured. If values are different by more than 3 ml or more than 10% of the highest value, then it means there are some technical errors and the test must be done again. The reporting format is standardized. There is an unadjusted or uncorrected DLCO, then it is corrected applying the correction formulas for hemoglobin, altitude and carbon monoxide. Then the predicted and the percent predicted of DLCO, predicted and percent predicted of DLCO by VA. Then the adjustments which are done for the hemoglobin and carbon monoxide. The inspired volume VI is also measured. So, all these are given in the report. Interpreting DLCO involves a consideration of 3 factors: what is the KCO, what is the VA and what is the DLCO. When we talk of diffusion capacity, then we talk of DLCO in general, but interpretation also involves considering KCO and the VA, because these are related entities and changes in DM, theta and the capillary blood volume all will change KCO. So, diffusion capacity can be reduced if KCO is reduced, which means the gas exchange in the single unit of lung is reduced, or the volume available is reduced, or when both are occurring. So, this will help in understanding the conditions in which diffusion capacity changes. Changes in VA, microcirculation and their effect on lung units, these will determine in which direction KCO is changing and DLCO is changing. The important point to remember here is that changes in gas exchange reflected in changes in diffusion capacity are sometimes the first change in lung function. We can have a normal spirometry, we can have a normal lung volume in patients with pulmonary vascular diseases or interstitial lung diseases, and the diffusion capacity may be the first test to be altered. Like in spirometry and lung volumes, to say what is normal and what is abnormal requires comparison with predicted values. So, we predict a patient's diffusion capacity using equations, and for Indian subjects use of Indian equations is recommended. Recently, prediction equations for diffusion capacity have been described for Indian population. So, all that is required is patient's height and age, which are to be fed in the software. The standard error of estimate is given to compute the lower limit of normal, as we do for lung volumes and spirometry. Values which are less than lower limit of normal will be abnormal, low. Values which are above upper limit of normal are increased. Unlike spirometry, diffusion capacity can be reduced, normal or increased. In spirometry, there is nothing like an increased spirometry value. So, in spirometry, we have 2 categories, reduced and normal. In diffusion capacity and in lung volumes, we have got 3 categories, reduced, normal and increased. So, therefore, defining lower limit of normal and upper limit of normal both are required, and for this the standard of estimate is required. Now, let us see the conditions in which diffusion capacity is altered. It may be decreased in diseases which are outside the lung, extrapulmonary. If the patient does not inflate the lungs technically, or there is a condition which is preventing full expansion, that is, there is a respiratory muscle weakness or a thoracic cage abnormality, kyphoscoliosis, obesity. So, full inspiration is not occurring, and because inhalation determines diffusion capacity, so diffusion capacity will be reduced in these conditions. If we do not allow enough time in obstructive diseases, if it is too short a breath holding, VA will be underestimated. So, we can have a falsely low diffusion capacity if the technical factor is not taken care of. Then there are other conditions which decrease diffusion capacity. Again, recalling that the blood in the capillary volumes also determines diffusion capacity, and the rate of combination of oxygen and hemoglobin, that is important. So, changes in the pulmonary vasculature will also affect diffusion capacity. So, conditions like anemia, pulmonary emboli, pulmonary vascular diseases which cause pulmonary hypertension, changes in hemoglobin properties like presence of carboxyhemoglobin in smokers, or if the patient is not holding breath during the maneuver causing change in the capillary blood volumes. So, these will reduce theta Vc, the theta Vc component of the diffusion capacity. Remember, diffusion capacity contains two components, the membrane component and the pulmonary capillary component. So, these are the conditions which affect the pulmonary capillary component, reduce theta Vc and therefore, reduce DLCO and KCO. Then there are pulmonary conditions which change DLCO causing a decrease. This would be largely because of the change in the DM component. The change in the capillary component is variable depending on what is the VQ mismatch occurring in the specific disease. But in general, you will find that both are reduced or only DLCO is reduced. So, you can have a condition where DLCO is reduced, but DLCO by VA is normal. So, there's this variation can be there in certain pulmonary conditions of VQ mismatch depending on what is reduced more. So, in a patient who has undergone a lung resection, we can expect the DLCO to reduce, but later on the remainder lung that has a compensatory increase in volume and compensatory increase in perfusion. So, theta Vc can increase again later on. In emphysema, it is reduced, and that is a classical change in COPD, a reduction in diffusion capacity. In most of the diffusion, in most of the interstitial lung diseases like IPF and sarcoidosis, diffusion capacity is decreased. Then in other conditions like pulmonary edema and pulmonary vasculitis, the diffusion capacity can be reduced. Diffusion capacity can also be increased if there is too much of blood in the lungs, that is an increase in the theta Vc. So, conditions like polycythemia, conditions like left to right shunt, pulmonary hemorrhagic conditions, asthma, because in asthma, especially in severe asthma, there can be increase in circulation and hyperdynamic circulation can be there. So, these conditions increase the pulmonary capillary blood flow and increase diffusion capacity. Then technical factors can lead to spuriously high diffusion capacity, because these are factors which affect the pulmonary blood volume, like patient performing a Muller maneuver, exercise before the test done in a supine position, and obesity, because in obesity the same cardiac output goes through a smaller lung volume. So, there is an apparent increase in pulmonary circulation. So, all these are physiological changes in diffusion capacity. Thank you very much.